Hello from Bali. This is a podcast Pigeon of Peace where we do discuss awesome skills of troubleshooters. Watch, listen, and check the description below for the details. Let's talk about Microsoft SQL and let's start with the definition.
When you work with some office program, for instance, it could be Access or Excel. By the way, they were all also developed by Microsoft. You will find that they are quite convenient. But after you will exceed 10,000 lines, you will find that all of these programs would work rather slow. And the reason is because they using some kind of cache. They allocate heap of memory and then they make some operations. But after 10,000 lines, suddenly everything would work not such smooth as before. And you will start think, what should I switch? Or what could I use instead of those programs? My lovely is Microsoft SQL or Light SQL if I have no server. Even on my notebook, I have SQLite and I use it, for example, to find right tags for YouTube or to проводить, to conduct experiments.
Yes.
Experiments with LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and some other programs and networks. Why it is work so? If you use SQL, this program will allocate all available memory. For example, you have on my notebook, I have like 64 gigabytes. It's quite large amount of memory, and everything would work very smooth. And you could make calculations. For example, last night we were working with student of School of Troubleshooter, Ramil Mamedov, and we were creating 24 reports for one FMCG company for last 3 months. And if we'll try to make this in Excel, it would take us, I don't know exactly, maybe like 1 week. But in SQL, all of those reports were created, I don't know exactly, like 6 minutes.
So what might be the main, I would say, reasoning when we want to switch from the tools like Excel or Access? Probably, yes, it might be the performance. It might be maybe the scope of work. And what about like any other things that definitely would be, I would say, like a key factors in order to make this decision immediately?
I'm very shy and I feel ashamed when I talk about Excel, but all IT guys would say that Excel maybe it's worst program to use in a large corporation. But from other side point of view, all your prototype could be created in Excel. For example, let's start from the beginning of the process, clusterization. We will take all the data and we will create dictionaries and we will start to make cleaning. And usually you will make those cleanings by your hands. You will make like pivot tables.
Yes, pivot tables.
You will use like pivot tables, and then you will find and you will correct mistakes which was occurred because of other operators. They make errors while typing city, profession, name, surname, and streets. Then you will find that some of those lines would occur, for example, more than 20 times. And in this case, if you use Excel, you will make sorting and you will make copy and paste those cells so often that you will create errors. But if you will use SQL, you could create select and update operators. They could update, I don't know, any amount of lines at once, for example, even 1 million.
And when it actually starts with, like maybe creating the model or maybe uploading the data, obviously there should be this thing called schema, or I don't know, like maybe it's more complicated nowadays. So how you should approach in order to like think how the model should look like, because usually, from my understanding, you actually have to create everything by yourself, and you have to give like all of the definitions, types, and fields. So how you go ahead and proceed with creating the model of the database?
I give you example of one exact process I was leading. First time when we were trying to grant a credit, we try to write all the digits on a whiteboard, and up to the end of the day we have filled, I don't know, like 10 lines. Next day it was like 40 lines. Next day we were using like Excel and it was like 100 lines. But after several weeks, we have already several thousand lines, and it's going to be so slow that our operators couldn't work in simultaneous mode. And then we try to remember something about database structure or scheme, as you told us before. There are several normalization form. First form in squads, it would be like a flat table, and in this table, all of the rows and all of the cells would be filled with the same methods, and you could operate with this table. But for example, if you will have like 50 millions of the lines, or I don't know, maybe like 16,000 of the rows, in this case, you will create a so-called relation database. Instead of name Maxim or Oleg, you will use not the strings, but you will use pointers to other tables. So you will have table for names, surnames, cities, streets, profession, and so on. And let's make comparison. For example, if we have like table which is flat for 50 millions, you could make selection of, for example, shrink of this database like 4 hours in a row. But if you will create so-called related database and you will use like 20 of them, you could finish the same operation within 1 minute.
And maybe another thing is sometimes we might create a database when we actually want to collaborate with someone, or maybe we just want to, give someone an ability to get the data quickly. So whether Microsoft SQL might be quite suitable for this, and if yes, like what might be the interfaces or maybe, access, or if not, maybe we just would, limit ourselves with the dumping all of the data and sending it over like maybe in CSV format.
Let's talk in such a way. For example, you want to catch a fish. You could make it by your hands, or you could use a fishing rope. Or, for example, you want to create a spoon. You could make it from the paper, or you could make it from the plastic. So for everything, you could use suitable material and suitable method. The same with SQL. It was a time when I was trying to create a so-called file manager. It was time when everyone was trying to make it. It was time of Norton Commander, Volkov Commander, DOS Navigator, and so on. And I was also in a row with people who was creating like this. And sometimes you will find that people are not so accurate and they do not create directories. And you have, for example, like 16 files in a disk without any boxing, without any containers. And if you will try to read this by, for instance, assembler, it would take you, I don't know, several minutes. But if your computer wouldn't react in 2 seconds, everyone would think that your program is already hanging, and they would press Ctrl-Alt-Del. So I was asking some people who were ahead of me, and they were already owners of such program, and one of them was Evgeny Roshel. He is also author of WinRAR Archiver, and he told me, okay, come on, I just use libraries with Microsoft SQLite, and I asked him, but you using external parties libraries, so the program could be sometime, I don't know how to say, отозвано, withdraw. Revoked from the storages, from GitHub and so on. And he told me, no, this is a completely open source project, Light SQL, so you could use it. And when I tried to use it, I found that if I would write by myself something like database, it would take me, I don't know exactly, I'm not the best programmer in the world, so it would take me like maybe 5 to 6 weeks. But if I would use already optimized code by which was written by other people, I would just attach it for 2 hours, and it was so amazing. So now I use Light SQL in many of my projects. Even now, one book you have already bought it, Knigopedia. It was created with using Light SQL.
And maybe the moment we start to, like roll out the database, we start to, like exchange data. I do believe it's also would train another skill, the data querying as well, because sometimes, as you rightfully said, the data may have like a keys and connections and all of the dependencies and all of the different types of the dependencies. So that it also would train our skill in order to make the right query. So whether I would say, for example, in business of like troubleshooting, or maybe we've been trying to solve someone else's problem, whether it actually could seem as the magic when like you look into someone else's database and you actually can make a query and immediately you'll get the answer, or maybe it's not.
It depends from your imagination. Some people they live in a flat world, so they just trying to be worms. Some flying like a birds. But if you want to be troubleshooter, you should live at least in 5 dimension form. I will explain you why. Any task which could not be solved in your dimension could be solved in dimension with +1. For example, if you are living on a wire, you try to go on the wire, but something is sitting, for example, like a bird, and you couldn't jump through it. So you could switch in another direction, and in another direction or another dimension, you would solve it. For example, sometime you will construct something in real world, and you will make like a stockade, or you will dig the tunnel. So you're using another direction or another среда,
Environment.
another environment. The same in troubleshooter. If you want to be as smart as your customers expect, you should add to their dimension at least +1.
And then maybe another question, it's also slightly relevant to Microsoft SQL. Sometimes you also might be having, like faults or whatever, or another thing that you also told us that, for example, in artificial intelligence, it could be like a poison, and then, like it will be hallucinating. So how you should approach to creating like maybe different replicas or even the backups to make sure that you can, like cannot really spoil the data and you always can make a step back and start over.
I will give you right now 3 steps. If you will support it, you will spoil database not so often as other people. First, you should make replics as often as it possible and never delete previous versions. And when you make this backup, you should write not just date and time and reason. For example, I corrected all Maxim to all Max, and for example, all Oleg to Oleg, for example. Second, when you write something in SQL, never use just update, but use at first select. So select and update operators, they have completely same syntaxes. And if you will, for example, if you are, for example, a mature programmer, sometimes you will say, okay, I know this data quite well, so I would write at once update. And then you will understand in 1 or 2 seconds after you press the button or push the button, you will understand I make an error, and you have no other options but just restore it from backup. But I use another way. I use select. So I see by my eyes what would be corrected, and I never believe to my logic. So first, make backup. Second, use select before update. And third, always create like a log of your updates. For example, I would make a backup, then I would make select, then I would make update, select, update, select, update. And all of this select, then I will copy to external file. And if I would recover something from database, I would recover this from database, and all updates, I don't know, 100, 200, they would be running in at once, and all of the time I spent already to clean previous version of database would be achieved by this moment.
Well, those are brilliant advices. And my last question will be how knowing about Microsoft SQL could help to make this world a better place.
When I was in Germany, it was like 30 years ago. Suddenly I found that one colleague of mine was using a special knife to cut the cheese. I was from poor country, Ukraine, and we were using just the same knife to cut the meat, the bread, and cheese. And suddenly in Germany, I found they use special kind of knife. I don't know how to say, but with huge holes. So it almost not a cutting edge, but there is a lot of holes. And I ask them, why use such a kind of knife? And they say me, it would not stick to the, this product would not stick to this, I don't know how to say, жало ножа, или как-то, body of the knife.
Blade.
Blade, yes, correct. The same was with peeling potato. Usually I was using to peel potato just usual knife, but they were using something in another direction. It was blade, but it was orthogonal, and they were using it, I don't know how to say, like grabbly.
For this one, you need to think about.
Okay. And from this point, I started to understand that if you want to do some job in a fancy mode, you should use very specific instrument. The same with SQL. You know, SQL has one disadvantage. It will start, for example, for 20 or for 30 seconds. So you should wait. But then all of your operations would work rather fast.
And we review the skill of Microsoft SQL and how it could be helpful to you. Stay in peace.